Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. So, charting your data path, career journeys, and tips with the DataFam. We're really excited for everyone to join us. In the chat, there is where you can ask questions. If you need any support, we do have our team that is with us. So, we have Lilia, we have Sam, and Alyssa, who are with the Tableau community to support. If you have any questions or any concerns, they'll be looking at your questions and posts of that nature. So let's go ahead and get started. And just giving a little bit more about our DataFam, and I'll start with myself. My name is Jessica Lyons. I will be the host for today. I am the Senior Program Manager with Tableau for Teaching. What I do basically is I have the fantastic job of partnering with universities and educational institutions to bring data skills to the forefront. And how do we make that happen? By equipping educators and students with resources like curriculum materials, software licensing, and even program support. And with that, that's how we bring Tableau into the classroom, turning data learning into an exciting adventure. But that's a little bit about what I do, where I'm from. I am from Chicago, Illinois, and I started my personal journey in psychology and transitioned to academia and then transitioned over here to Tableau. But this is not about me. We want to make sure that we have our wonderful guests, and if they could just introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My office lights have actually started to go off now. You can see the screen getting darker and darker. I'll quickly introduce myself before this one turns off as well. But yeah, so I'm Bhumika. I recently completed my master's degree from Imperial College London. And last year was when I actually discovered the Tableau community as a Tableau student ambassador. And I have basically, worked with different industries. I did my undergraduation in finance, and then COVID hit, so I pivoted to marketing. And I basically discovered I worked in different areas of marketing. I worked in social media marketing, performance, influencer marketing, and all the different areas. And while I was, just experimenting, I discovered that data with every aspect of marketing was at the source of it. I started how, like everyone starts. I started with creating like really basic Excel charts and popping them into like PPT presentations, making them fancy there and presenting whatever I could. But during my year in London at my master's degree, I got a bunch of these resources as a student ambassador. I got in touch with the information lab, attended a lot of training sessions, attended a lot of networking events through Tableau user groups, community events, and I got really into it. And I think I officially used Tableau for the first time as part of a case study when I was applying for positions here in London. And I feel getting into data actually gave me the opportunity to marry marketing with data in the most like efficient way possible. And I actually just found out a completely new job title and job role to go with it, which was a growth marketing executive, which I'm currently working as at StoryTerrace. So I feel like Tableau just helped me navigate that career path, and just helped me combine all of my skill sets together. And I love what I'm doing right now. Over to you, Zifa.
Awesome.
That was so amazing. Hi, everyone. My name is Dzifa Amexo. I currently work as a social media and content senior specialist at Tableau. But before that, I actually was a data consultant. So I was a Tableau developer, doing all the dashboards, migrations, all this fun stuff. But I actually got my origins. I never actually planned to, like work in data. My background when I was like a kid, I really wanted to be a nurse, and then I took bio, chem, and I was like, okay, I like love Grey's Anatomy, but I can't really do the whole science thing. So I love math. I kind of transitioned into finance and went to school for finance, stumbled upon analytics, and ever since I really didn't even really know what it was at first, but I was like, this kind of sounds cool. Let me try it out. And it's really been over the past 5 years of just like learning about data, learning about Tableau. There's so much that I never knew that, like it was involved in this field. I really thought it was like a certain type of person that goes into data and analytics. And I think just from like my journey alone and being involved with Tableau, I before this was a Tableau ambassador. I was leading Tableau user groups. And so really just being a part of the Tableau community and learning about the software tool that I tell people like Tableau changed my life. And they're like, what do you mean? It's so crazy to think about, because I think I've learned so much, not just about data, but also just about the world, and learning how data is really in everything. You don't need to be a data analytics major to know about data and work with data. But it's been such a crazy journey, been through a lot of different career paths that just kind of stumbled into, but they've all brought me here today to a social media role, which still involves data. I would have never guessed I'd be here today, but I think it's just so cool to really just think about the power of data in all of our lives. And it's really great to just think about how we all have different stories, but we all have to share this common goal about being passionate about data. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here today and talk a little bit more about my journey, how I got to where I am today, and all the fun that came along with that. I'm also based in New York, and yeah, I love New York a lot. So that's a lot of my personality.
Well, we are grateful to have you both here, and just hearing a little bit of your background, that is absolutely amazing. Now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and jump into some questions so that we can learn a little bit more. As your host, I have some questions that I just want to get all up in their business. However, everyone in the audience and everyone that is here today, one, we appreciate you being here. And then what we'll do, as I stated earlier, just to make sure, as some people just joined in, is that if any questions that arise, please throw them in the chat. Even while they're speaking, it is absolutely okay. Those questions in there, because we have a wonderful team that can pull some of those. And then at the end, if you would prefer to wait, we can also ask a little more questions during that time. So I'll go ahead and get us going with the first question. And I like to always start with this one. Is it data or data? Bhumika, is it data or data? A data.
I go with
Oh,
yeah, I prefer data. Yeah. I think
data.
it's data.
Awesome.
I feel it's more like a British English and American English. So British English would be like data, and American English would be data. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I won't be
I
correcting
say data.
anyone today. What about you, Ziffa?
I say data. I think I sometimes alternate, but like if I'm alone, I'm like data. But no, data. Yeah, data. 100%.
Yes, I agree. Okay, awesome. I see on the chat data. All right, awesome. Some people say, okay, a lot of data's in here. Well, that was just to kick us off, but I am very big on before I can go into current today. I like to always honor people's history and where they came from. So, quick question. And I know both of you kind of shared a little bit in your intros, but if you can start with when it comes to data or data, with that being said, where did you start your journey? Where would you say that, hey, that is the premise of what began?
I would say for me, it would be uh, like when I was actually working in India, I started my own digital marketing agency, and I was working with a lot of clients. And there was this point at every meeting where we had to discuss KPIs, and I feel the PPT wasn't just cutting it. Like I wanted to get my point across, but there wasn't just like there was a lot of like back and forth going on with some data being here, some data being there, and that's when I knew like something was missing. There's something that I need to show here that helps me explain what I'm doing in a much better way. I think that if I can pinpoint to that, exact moment where I thought to myself, okay, maybe, I have to search for tools to help
Mhm.
express myself better. I think that was a turning point for me. And when I actually heard about Tableau, I connected the dots there. Like, okay, this is the tool that I need.
Love that. Love that. Okay. So just kind of understanding is that you were in a job role already, it sounds like, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what was happening is you needed a way to express yourself. You needed a way to get your point across. And so this is where data comes in. And if I'm understanding correctly, it's probably also a way to have everyone aligned, because I know it's sometimes difficult to have conversations with people if you're on different pages.
Exactly.
So if I'm understanding correctly, okay, awesome. So the data kind of brings in that. Amazing. What about you, Zia? Do you share that experience, or what is your experience?
Yeah, so my experience was a little bit earlier on. In high school, I took AP statistics, so I loved math in school. I was like, yes. I actually did enjoy statistics. I think it kind of gets a bad rep. Everyone's like, oh, we hate stats. But I enjoyed it. I remember it was probably the second to last day of school. We were watching this YouTube video. It was Hans Rosling, and he shows like I think it's the title is like the best stats you've ever seen. So we're watching this like long YouTube video, and like everyone's ready to like leave, it's like getting towards summer. But for some reason, this YouTube video had me locked in. Like I was so captivated. And basically he shows this like scatter plot. He's showing like inequality between different countries. And I mean, at this point, I didn't know what Tableau was, but just seeing the way that the data was visualized and seeing how he took such like a complex topic made it so simple. And also the storytelling aspect, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is really cool. And that just stuck with me, but I didn't like after that I didn't really take anything with it. I just thought like that was really cool. Stats seems like something useful that I need in business school, and that's really it. And so from there, when I went off to university, I started with finance and marketing, and I ended up dropping my second major of marketing, which is funny now because I work in marketing. I was like, I'm not a creative person. This is too hard. And one of my professors was like, oh, you should look into analytics. Like we have this new specialization. It's in data analytics. And I literally had like never heard those two words spoken. So I was like, I don't really know, but you're recommending it. It sounds good. Like I'll try it out. And the first class that I took also was not about Tableau. And it was really just talking about like, how do you take a question and how do you answer a question? And so when I understood that at like its fundamental level, I was like, whoa, like one of our capstone project was looking at Yelp reviews. And I was like, okay, I love going out to eat. I love restaurants. And she was like, I want you to find me the best restaurant in our small town of like Dobbs Ferry, New York. And so we went through the process of collecting the data, going through all the Yelp reviews, doing a sentiment, well, not doing a sentiment analysis, but taking parts of what would be like a sentiment analysis. Like, is this a positive review? Is this a negative review? And so from there, the process of taking, and all this like was in Excel, but the process of taking so much data and having so much information and then distilling it down to something that actually makes sense was so like fun to me. And then the part that I really loved was the communication aspect, which is so funny because I like was a really shy kid. So I hated like presenting and things like that. But when we got up there, we shared our like favorite restaurants and the process that we went through. I was like, okay, this is really cool that we started out with nothing and we turned this into something. So for me, that was, I think, my first experience into data.
Love that. Okay, real quick question. So what was the best restaurant?
Okay, it was this. I don't know if I'd recommend it as the best, but it was this Mexican place in Dobbs Ferry. It was also vegan, which I mean the reviews are very high, but to be fair, there weren't that many reviews. So, but I tried it. It was good. The restaurant's called Tomatillo. If you're ever in Dobbs Ferry, New York, and you want to try a vegan burrito, you can't tell that it's vegan though. Like I'm not vegan, and I tried it, and I was like, this is really good.
Interesting. I do see that we have some questions in the chat, so I'm just going to check in there really quickly. And I think it has to do with, especially how you both started, like how do you get started? And so it does sound like Bhumika and Celia kind of brought that up, is that you came in with domain experience and it was how to further yours. Dzifa, yours was a little bit different. It sounds like you are saying like, hey, I am, you know what I mean? This is something that I was presented with in a different way and got excited about it. So we do have a question that's really saying that they're having a hard time to find places to start with training. How do we get past the basics and learn the tricks that make me look smarter than I really am? And again, I'm getting someone with a bad rap. I didn't go into my background, but I'm a stats professor, so y'all are hurting my feelings today. So saying that you're not a stats person, struggling with creating what I know can be done. What are some of your tips for getting started with learning the basics?
I feel like one of the things that you mentioned actually touch a lot on like imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
Thinking that you're not smart is, the first thing. And there are so many associations, that come on when you're thinking about a career in data. Like, I need to know how to, code well. I need to know about programming languages. I need to know, a lot of other things to just sound smarter and look smarter. And honestly, I actually have a really funny story about that. My first Tableau event, I knew nothing about Tableau, and I attended this event thinking everyone around me is, like so much smarter than I am. Everyone was just coming up to me and talking about different things, the different like fields and data fields and different like calculations, parameters, actions they tried out, tips and tricks they saw on YouTube. And I was so lost in that conversation. I almost, started doubting myself. Okay, what am I doing here? If this is even the thing for me, or should I, just drop out? Should I, like do this and just go back? Maybe this is not for me. But I ended up just nodding through every conversation, like.
Mhm.
And honestly, I feel a lot of the times many people are doing that. And I've discovered that through many conferences because you can't know everything there is to know about a software, even if you're working in it for like, 5 or 10 years. And there are so many updates and upgrades happening all the time. It's impossible to, keep in like on track with all of the updates that are going on. So it's always okay to not know everything. Even if you're a beginner, you don't have to, go in and feel scared about it. Just I have been in so many groups where I have just taken notes of what was going around. I actually remember one of the notes I took was LOD calculation, like LOD versus like Tableau calculation in my notes. That was the first Tableau event, and I went back home and I googled what it actually meant. So that's how, I would say my first interactions were with Tableau. And after that, you just, sort of find ways or, like navigate it through, I would say something as simple as YouTube videos to community projects to how we have the weekly Tableau projects, back to Viz Basics, and the sports Sundays, and all of those community projects. You find those resources. You make your way into it slowly. You try your hand on into it. Maybe you take a break for a couple of months. You go back to it. You find a new project, and I would say uh, the worst thing you can do is just like completely, back away and stop doing it. If you're making
Mm.
progress slowly, at least you're still making progress. I don't know if that made sense. I think I just went back a full
No,
circle and went back to
you hit it. You hit this. This is I'm getting all the nuggets and all the feels. It's so much so that I'm like, don't interrupt her. So like with that, like one is let's go ahead and have this conversation. As if I'm wrong, push back. When we talk about imposter syndrome and when it comes to data skills, can we just talk about that for a moment? And Bhumika, I love that you even said like just nod through the conversation with that. Like that
Yes.
was the most authentic response I've ever heard. And I love that you're able to just say that because I think that many of us, like you said, are doing that. I know for me, I'll be honest, is that sometimes I'm doing it because I'm like, I will get it later. Then I'm like,
Hmm,
I'm taking note to it. And I may not understand the full context of what you're saying right now, but
exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
figuring as you keep talking, I'm going to get it. Or like you said, I'll put it in my notes and like, okay, so are we talking about level of detail? Is it LOD? Is it load? Like, what are they saying? I'll figure that out a little bit later with that. So I appreciate that. But if we could just talk for a moment about imposter syndrome, Ziffa, can you share? Have you had that experience before?
Yes, I'm currently going through it every day. And I will say it's so real, and I think sometimes we don't talk about it enough. But whenever I come out, I'm like, I've been using Tableau for 5 years, and I was a Tableau ambassador. People are like, oh my gosh, like they're so. I'm like, I will still Google things every day. When I was a consultant, how do I set this LOD calculation? How do I write this table calculation? Like, there are still so many things that I don't know. When we talk about AI, like this is a new thing for me. It's scary, but there's so much that we don't know. And I think just taking comfort in the fact that I'm never going to know everything. I will be the first person to say like my like coding, like my SQL, Python skills are very rough. I'm not never gonna sit here and be like, I'm the best SQL coder. I know that I can try my best and I can always reach out for help and know like who do I work with? Who do I know in the Tableau community that's a Python wizard that can help me out? So I think imposter syndrome is so real, like no matter how long you've been in the game. And I feel like I've been here a while. I still feel it. It's very real. You're never gonna know everything. And we're all in it. You know, we're all kind of experiencing it. We just maybe don't talk about it as often. And I think one of the things too, like my background wasn't necessarily there are a lot of people I think in data that have the traditional background, but then there's some people that come from an art history background and English background. And I think part of the things that help me combat imposter syndrome is like, what is my own superpower? Like, yes, I'm not the best at this, but I always know I'm going to show up and give 110%. I always know, like, if you want me to give a presentation, I'll do it. I'll probably make a joke. So I think focusing on your strengths and the different things that you bring to the table, even though I'm not like, you know, the best data expert, are ways to just kind of make it a little bit easier. And it is real. Now I'm in a social media role. I've never done social media before. I told you guys I literally dropped marketing as a major because I was not a creative person. But I'm like, okay, I know Tableau. Been using Tableau for a few years. So that's something that I know that I bring to the table, and everything else we're just learning and we're taking it day by day. And I mean, data is also in social media, so I am getting a little bit of that. But I also say like practice is really, really helpful. When just throwing back to like the how did you get started? I took a class, like a college class in Tableau. After that, I still felt like I didn't know how to make a parameter. I was like, I don't know how to do this. Like, this is really hard. The thing that helped me learn the most was really joining the community, doing those projects, make everyone day, back to those basics, putting my work out there on Tableau Public that now is, well, it's not embarrassing. But at the time, I was like, this is so bad. I don't want anybody to see it. But being vulnerable and allowing people to see like, hey, this is where I'm coming from. It might be really bad, but no one's ever going to tell you that. They're just going to give you feedback to help you improve, because genuinely, like, everyone that I've met so far in the DataFam just like wants to see you succeed, and they're coming from a place of kindness. And so I think for me, like, it was so helpful to see something really great out there and then try to download it and practice it myself to learn. And I'm still learning. Is at the end of the day has to end, but the learning never stops is what I'll say.
I absolutely love that. And Kathy, I'm going to get to your questions because I love your questions, but I want us to just kind of close out on the imposter syndrome piece. And the reason why I love that you kind of, Bhumika kind of kicked us off with it, but I love that because, again, people talk about data and we're practitioners. Right? Like when people like, okay, so I've asked people like, are you a data rock star? They're like, no, don't put me as a data rock star. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, why would you not be a data rock star or whatever? And they're like, because I'm not an expert, like I'm not whatever. And I'm like, the truth is the way technology and data is changing, who can actually be an expert? Like we're all practitioners. We're always kind of practicing with it. And then also we have to be honest about some of our spaces. I know sometimes for me, I come in this skin and I come in this body. When I walk in the room, sometimes I don't have many others that look or sound just like me, but I'm in this space and that I have to go in and I have to combat, you know, all of those inner thoughts as well as the imposter syndrome to say, hey, look, I'm here and I'm humble and I'm ready to learn. And I'm also willing to give the knowledge that I do have. So I thank you both for kind of sharing your experiences as well, because it's something that is very true. Like imposter syndrome, we kind of say like, I want to look smart. No one wants to have that. No one not wants to look smart, right? So, you know, the other piece, Bhumika, before we get into the questions that Kathy has brought in, you talked about, and actually for both of you both talked about the step of, if I can just say the word and push back if I'm wrong, this courage, right? Like I know I looked at the community projects, I looked at Dzifa's profile and I'm like, oh, like that, I don't know if I can do that, right? What did that feel like? Where did that come from? What was that push? Or have you ever had a project where it's hard? Bottom line, it's just been hard and you can't get to that place you want to be. What do you do? What is your mindset to overcome?
I think it's more like just a day-to-day approach, more like, I have to face the situation with a lot of courage. It's more like you're presented with a situation and you don't really want to say no to it. Like for me, it would be when basically we were just working a group project in my master's degree, and they saw on my LinkedIn profile that I was a Tableau student ambassador, and we had a data set, we had a marketing like analytics project, and they just said that we basically want to create a very fancy dashboard with the data that the professor had given us, and we want to create a user journey map with different elements of like user journey and like awareness and every basically different column of it with different sheets, and just make it look like really pretty and everything. And because they saw that I was a Tableau student ambassador and I had done a lot of workshops and I had got like really cool people from Tableau to attend those workshops, I thought that I could do it in my sleep. And I didn't really want to say no because they were making me look smart at that moment. But I basically just went with it. I spent like 5 days sleeping for like 2 hours at night, learning everything I
Hmm.
could, going through all of those like e-learning parts. And I basically just pushed myself on, to make stuff look a little bit like more professional in the dashboard. And when I eventually did it, I could not say that okay, I killed myself to present this dashboard for the our like group project. But I think that because I felt proud when everyone was like, "Wow, this looks so cool." I like after doing that, I discovered okay, I could have said no. I could have just said that, or I could have made an excuse for not doing it. And when you look back at it, it's sort of a courageous moment for you to push yourself and complete that project and not say no. But when you're actually doing it, you're just in the momentum. And once you've completed it, then the pride follows, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So, yes, I love that. So, that resilience going through, and I like, let's just be honest, Bhumika started like, well, it's not going to be a no. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
saying no. So, that also shares the type of person that Bhumika is. Ziffa, what about you? What is that thing that you did? Like, when has there been a project that you like, this is difficult? I'm getting stuck on it. What was that thought process and what did you do?
Yeah, so many times. I think when I look back, I'm like, oh, I can think about 5 times that happened in the past month. But I'll give two kind of one personal, the other one work examples. So one was when back in my beginner, I guess, Tableau days, I saw this dashboard on Tableau Public and I was like, oh, this looks really cool. Like, I'm gonna do something similar for Makeover Monday. So I downloaded it and trying to like, look at what the person did, reverse engineer it. And I like for the life of me, like could not figure out how to get it's always parameters. Now I love parameters, but I couldn't figure out how to get this parameter to work. So I'm struggling and I'm like, like I am spending like hours just like going back and forth trying to figure out like what this is. And I'm Googling things, but for me, one thing that kind of like clicked is once I started to use Tableau more and more and more, I realized there's certain words that when you're searching for certain things, if you include those keywords, it'll be easier to find the question that you're looking for. So I would spend like hours on like, why can't I find this? And then I would explain to someone, they're like, oh, try looking up XYZ. And then the forum article would pop up or the Flurlage Twin blog would pop up with my answer. But before that, I reached out to a friend and I DM'd her, granted a friend that I'd never met, but we just had Tableau come. I was like, hey, like I'm really struggling with this. Like, can you take a look and like let me know if like you can figure this out? So she's like, yeah, like this, and this is like a Saturday. Like she has a life. She's like, let's hop on a call and we'll like work through this together. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we got on the call in probably like 10 minutes and she figured it out. And so that to me was like, I have always been a person, I think it's a little bit because of my upbringing. It's like you want to figure things out yourself. Like you want to like try really hard and put in 110%. And it's like
Mhm.
never give up. But sometimes it's like I'm not giving up. I'm just taking a different path. So for me, that's like you don't always have to spend 4 hours figuring out an issue. Like know what your max is. Maybe it's you spend 1 hour. If I can't figure this out in 1 hour, let me go to the forums. Let me go to the Slack group. Let me ask a friend. And 9 times out of 10, just having someone else's eyes on something is going to either help you figure it out or they'll figure it out for you. So that was for me
Mhm.
was really eye opening. The other quick story I'll tell is my previous role as a data consultant. So it's primarily Tableau developer. So different industries, talking about healthcare, consumer goods, and they come in and say, we have all this data. we want to track like the logistics of our products, for example. I'd be like, okay, we go through the process, make them dashboard, cool. One thing that I had no experience in before I came to the job, I was like, I know like I can make a dashboard. That's like my bread and butter. And they're like, okay. But one thing that was like a stretch project for me is doing a Tableau migration. So for those who aren't familiar, there's Tableau Server, which is like an on-prem, and then Tableau Cloud. So our client was like, we want to migrate all of our content from Tableau Server to Tableau Cloud. And this was like, I was still pretty new into the job. My boss was helping me out, but he was like, I think you could like do this by yourself. Like, I'll be here with you, but you just go ahead and do it. So I'm taking like probably like 60 dashboards from Tableau Server to Tableau Cloud. And I went through like the migration process, and I did something wrong. I don't actually to this day remember what it was, but basically the workbooks ended up in a place where they shouldn't have been. And there was no way to like undo and put it back and whatever. So I'm over here freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, like I messed up the entire migration, like the end of the world, blah, 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 blah. And my boss was like, it's okay. Like you just learned something new. Like if you never made this mistake, you wouldn't have learned that in this migration thing, you need to check like 2 boxes. So, and to be fair, like there was a lot of manual work to undo it. But at the end of the day, like the client never really found out. Like I had spent a lot of time undoing it, but to me that was also like, it's okay to make mistakes. Like you can, I think it's also important to make sure you're like in a safe space. My boss was like very like, much like, you're new, like this is the first time you're doing this, like it's okay, like you make mistakes to learn. So I think for me it was like, oh, okay, I made a mistake. It's not the end of the world, but now I know like I'm probably never gonna forget to check that box on the migration tool. So yeah, I think for me, kind of like making a mistake and knowing that it's not the end of the world, like I still have my job, gave me courage to be like, oh, okay, like I can go on and try hard things that I might fail at, and that's okay. Like life goes on and you learn.
I love that. Like for both of like, especially the connection to it. Like you said, the one is I'm the same way, that is like, I can't make a mistake, right? It could be just the way I was raised. I'm not going to put my mother on blast right now, but like, you know, it's like, get it right. Like you have to achieve, right? So there is some of that where it's like, hey, I'm human though. Like that's the reality of it. But also the other space for people who are kind of that, not only grace for yourself, but grace for others, that every, you know, or what is that quote? If I'm never losing, I'm always learning. So I believe it was by Mandela. So it's that, hey, I'm either winning or learning. And so with that, it sounds like that's kind of the experience that both of you have had as well. Going into, because I promised Kathy I would go into the questions. So Kathy says, you have mentioned AI. What is your outlook on how it is impacting Tableau or Power BI, and what we as data viz content creators bring to the table? Anyone can answer. Thoughts?
I love this question because I recently now like love AI, but when I first heard about it, I was like, AI is gonna take my job. Like it's gonna make the dashboard. It's gonna do everything I could do. And I was very much scared. And I wasn't. I mean, I guess I was like alive during the internet, but I wasn't like, I didn't live through the .com boom. So, but I imagine this is similar. Like when people heard about the internet, they're like, oh my God, like this is gonna ruin everything. It's gonna take my job. That's what I feel like is the vibe that we're feeling with AI. But now that I know more about AI and the bit that I know about AI is like Tableau Agent. So I look at Tableau Agent and the fact that you can type in like build a bar chart to show me like sales over time, and Tableau Agent will build that. Like that's so exciting because for me, like when I was learning that, like that took me a long time to learn. And I think there's a lot of people are fearful, and I get it because I was too, but I'm more excited because I think Tableau Agent being able to build a line chart for me in 2 minutes is going to make my job easier, because as a consultant, or previous as a consultant, one of the most important conversations we would have is like the scoping call, where it's like, now where they're like, oh, we want a dashboard for this, and we have a conversation. And then sometimes we get at the end of the conversation, we realize like, oh, you guys thought you wanted a dashboard for this, but you actually want it for XYZ. So I think with AI coming in to take some of the, I mean, they're still important tasks, but I think AI will allow us to focus on more strategic things, to have more important conversations about how are we collecting the data? How are we using the data? What questions do we actually need to answer that'll move the business forward? And I think too, like it's not AI is going to replace humans. I think it's the like tagline is humans with AI working together, human with agents. Where like I actually believe that I don't think AI is like self-sufficient enough for it to work by itself. Like it still needs us and our experiences and our culture and all the things that make us unique, and the way that we oh my gosh, you think about it's like a whole can of worms, but like just like ethics when it comes to data and like how we phrase certain things, how we're using data around sensitive topics. AI has not been trained to that yet, or maybe it's starting to, but we still need to like check that. So I think it's exciting because we'll get to have more important conversations that really move the needle forward on things that are really important, and that'll be more important for business while also making it easier for new people to learn. Like I wish Tableau Agent was around back in my day, which was like 5 years ago. So yeah, I'm excited. I think there's a lot of innovation coming out, and what we can do is, I believe there's a trailhead about AI or data literacy. Like take the trailhead, learn, listen, because I think it's scary when you don't really know about it. But once you start to learn more about it, you're like, oh, like this actually could be really beneficial. So I'm really excited about the future of Tableau and AI in general.
Yeah,
Yes, and I
definitely.
know our Lilia. I'm sorry, go ahead, Bhumika. I'm sorry. I was just pointing out that Lilia did put some resources as well about AI resources and capabilities. So they are there as well if anyone wants to see. But Bhumika, I would love to hear your perspective on it.
Oh, no, I actually was continuing what Dzifa said about phrasing the question, because I recently tried Tableau Agent at the DataFam Europe conference, and I feel it's very much about how you type in the prompts. And like I said, you can't really trust, what AI has done without like double checking or triple checking it, because at the end of it, the AI, or even for like database content creators or anything, an AI wouldn't know what the client has asked you for, or has asked you to do. So the question or the utility of that dashboard very well sits still with you, and you have to eventually present that data. So you have to double check it, you have to present it in a way that you're able to explain it, and you have to come up with prompts and suggestions to AI in a way that it builds the viz correctly or the sheet correctly. So I feel even for content creators right now, it's very much a learning curve for, like, even Tableau AI is a big learning curve for people. And as content creators, one can easily jump on this and help people learn how to use the Copilot or Tableau agent.
I love that. I do have another question, and here is where, so would you address what are the skill sets? So far, I know we've talked about, like Bhumika said, is that we're practitioners. We also kind of have to know where it is that we want to go. Sometimes it's okay for us to nod through it and just keep going. Dzifa has taught us the resilience piece and the courage and to ask questions. We also share some resources, but the rest of the question are saying, what other skill sets do we need to be able to demonstrate if you want to be hired using Tableau in today's market and or firms and institutions? And I know, Dzifa, you even talked about like you posting, publishing, vises where you're like, oh, someone's going to look at that. When they're looking to get hired using their visualizations or their Tableau public account or their evidence or their dashboards, what do you all think are the skill sets that's needed in the market today?
I feel for every industry, it's quite different. So, and currently there are so many like dynamic job titles and job roles that you can actually include data in a lot of industries where data wasn't early a part of. So even if you look at a very traditional marketing route, like Zifa said, basically you found that it was too creative for you. But if you look on the other hand, data is actually equally creative, but it's a different side of creative. So currently, you just have to find your own footing with it. I would say take a look at your existing skill sets and see what all platforms you already work with, and how you can actually extend those skill sets using Tableau. And then eventually, you will find a job title or a job role that fits that bill. Yeah, I would say
Love
that's my,
that.
yeah. I made a list of like Adobe software that I knew of. I made a list of like Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, and I worked on a HubSpot, the CRM software HubSpot, and basically just figured out, if I include Tableau in this mix, then what job role or job title, comes as a package out of it. And
Yeah.
I spent hours on LinkedIn just going through different marketing job titles. And I found two actually: demand generation and growth marketing. And I started just applying for all of those. And eventually, yeah, it did come out pretty well. But another thing that I would like to mention here is that you have to find out a way to put yourself out there. And Tableau Public is a really good, method of actually posting quizzes and sharing that link. And right now, in all of the job applications, there is a section there to include a personalized website link. So Tableau Public is a great addition in that website link that you can include, or you can even go the extra mile, create your own portfolio, have Tableau quizzes there, have additional skills of softwares that you might already be using, and combine that with Tableau and have an additional portfolio link there. So there are so many creative ways of doing this. There's so many dynamic tools and roles available. It's just a new world.
Thank you for sharing, Dzifa.
That was so good. I also just love that what you said about the creative, like marketing. I was like, oh, it's not creative enough. But then the other side of marketing could be super creative and like a data different way. I love that. That's so true. And I think I like just recently like learned that. So I love that you shared that piece of advice because it's so true. Echo everything you said. Tableau Public is really it for me. I think when thinking back to my first job, the consultancy job that I was at, at that point really was like fresh out of school. I had worked at Deloitte for 7 months and then I left. So I didn't really have much work experience, but I was like, I want this Tableau job. And I'm in the interview and we're talking about experience. And I was like, oh, like I actually have my Tableau Public portfolio. And I brought it up and my like manager then was like amazed. He was like, oh my gosh, like this is so good. And then when we got to the technical questions, I didn't do so well. But I stand by the fact that I do believe it's because I had a Tableau Public portfolio. And the fact that I demonstrated the soft skills that I think sometimes are a little underloved, underappreciated. Don't get me wrong, like it's so important to like know your SQL, basic stats, you don't have to love it, but basic stats, all that is like super important and you should know it. But from my perspective, especially when it comes to like consulting, you need to be able to know how to present the data, know how to communicate insights, how to ask questions, how to really understand like what somebody wants if they're not really saying it. So things that I learned actually not even in consulting, like I was a resident assistant in college and they taught us like when someone tells you about their problems, repeat it back to them so that they feel like you're listening. So that was something I learned in college, but I was doing as a consultant and they're like, oh, like we love that. I'm like, okay, cool. So I think skills that you have, you just need to like give yourself some credit. So like the soft skills, again, communication, listening, being able to like problem solve, being able to show that you're a fast learner. And I think you can show that through having a public portfolio, Tableau Public portfolio, creating a website, having like hands-on things that you've done and you've built is so, so powerful. I've seen like on times people ask on social media, like, oh, should I get this certification? Should I do this? Should I do that? And there are mixed, feelings. Yeah. My thoughts are 100% have a portfolio over a certification. Like once you get the job, they can pay for the certification, but you showing me that you tangibly know how to build a dashboard, you know how to, like organize things on Tableau server, Tableau cloud, like that speaks volumes more than like a certification. So yeah, I would just say, think about the soft skills that you have and also think about, there was a data career summit. They do it every year, but I think it was last year. My favorite times. And this guy, Dustin, he's also a Tableau ambassador. He came out and he did with Brandy, who's also a Tableau ambassador. And they listed out like the most common skills that people are looking for in job titles after do with like Tableau. And I don't remember what the major ones were, but I say all this to say that one thing that stuck with me was that they said that there's an increase in people having subject matter expert in a certain industry, and then like you learn the data skills. So what I'm trying to say is like they would rather have someone who like has HR experience and now that you're learning data versus like, I mean, a generalist is still good, but I still have to say like everyone has experience. So let's say like, you started out in HR, or you started out in healthcare, like bring that experience to the data role that you have if you are just now learning data. If you already know data, then that's great. But I think just give yourself a little bit more credit for the skills you bring to the table is the advice for skills that would get you a job in this market, I think.
Love that. You hit so many nuggets and so many things that we can unpack with some of this. Bhumika, before I start going all the way deep diving into what Dzifa said, was there anything else that you want? I know you gave a little bit of the skill set, but did you first want to say anything to each other about the things that you just shared?
I actually love the aspect of soft skills because that's so important. I feel we are taught that when you are building a dashboard, you start with a question and then you start unpacking if you have the data points to answer that question, and then you start creating a sheet, then you go on to build a dashboard,
Mm,
and you have that set procedure. But no one prepares us for the fact where you could actually just be in a conversation with someone who doesn't know the question, or they don't know what they're looking for. And that's true for so many scenarios. Like even today, there was a question of just why our sales agents are not working the way we want them to. It's a very open-ended question. No one's telling me the exact data points to look for. No one's telling me to which data to plug in and what to do and which KPIs to track. And uh, for answering those questions and then eventually building a dashboard that answers those questions, you have to bring your soft skills in. You have to lead the conversation in a way that eventually leads to a very like fruitful dashboard, and like action oriented dashboard. So I feel soft skills are definitely above all the technical skills that you can gather, and obviously projects over certifications. 100% back that up.
okay, so let's just have a real conversation here as well, because I totally get what you're saying, right? I totally get that. Again, I also understand that domain expertise. As a matter of fact, the way I look at it is that data set before you even throw it into Tableau, you have to get intimate with that data, right? And it's like you have to know what it is that you're looking for, because I don't know about you all, I've looked completely crazy sometimes creating charts, and they're like, yeah, that's not what that means, right? Like you like, oh, okay, like
Yeah.
this isn't what I thought it was, right? But what, and then I know we talk about soft skills as well, and you both have shared a little bit of your background. But what about people who are introverts, right? Like people who are like, hey, public speaking isn't necessarily my thing. Do you have any tips that you can give them?
That's a good
Uh,
question.
yeah, that's actually a really good one. I feel like for like a major part of my years in school and like undergrad, I like could still classify myself as an introvert. And to be honest, when I think of an introvert, I just feel that they are better at getting things done quickly. I don't think being an introvert is a bad thing. Honestly, you just get to the point quicker. You only talk when there's like real stuff to like add to the conversation, and you get things done quickly. So I actually don't think that being an introvert is a disadvantage, either in
Right.
creative field or a technical field.
Love that. Love that. So yeah, no, I definitely understand what you're saying.
I
And
love
that's
that.
why it's great to have partners on a team, because it's like, hey, I can do all of this and I just might need someone to support in that. Or like, hey, Bhumika, I love your honesty with it.
No,
uh,
that's so real. I'm like, oh,
right?
I'll spend like
Very,
the first
very
five
real.
minutes yapping about like something random. And it's like, all right, now let's talk about the dashboard. It's like, all right, girlie, let's talk about the business questions. We need somebody to keep us on track.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so true.
We have another question from Myra. Are there any resources or examples on how to craft an appropriate Tableau portfolio? Because Dzifa, you threw a hard nugget out there. So with that being said, what can we do with this? So now that you say we got it, we're all going to build our Tableau portfolios and we're going to publish them on Tableau Public. Are some resources or examples on how to craft the appropriate piece?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I want to ask back what is the appropriate portfolio, but I'll just give my interpretation. Um, I think there's a few different ways to go about like building it. I think when I was building mine, I was just like, I really like oh, I have like a viz about like my dating life. I was like, I have been on a lot of dates this year and I want to know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. So for me, like that was something that I was just personally interested in. And I think when I was learning, it was really helpful for me to viz about topics that just I was like excited to learn about. I was up till 3 a.m. like, you know, analyzing my data and things like that. So I think that's one approach, doing like the passion side. But then I also had like the business forward things that were like, you know, Superstore and things like that. Or I think if you know that you like want to go into HR, I don't know why I keep using the HR industry. You know, you want to go into HR, find a community project or find a data set around that topic and start to, you know, build your portfolio around that. That way it's more targeted. So when you go to the interview, you're like, hey, like I want to be in this field. So I've been working with this type of data and I know about retention and all these things. I'd also say there's so many community projects out there. If I wanted to list all of them, we'd be here for a long time. But back to this basis, Makeover Monday, I know we've all mentioned these. There are also like industry specific ones. So real world fake data is a really great one because it gives you that like real world business aspect to make a business dashboard, which is probably like the majority of what you'll be making, but it's with fake data. So I think, yeah, those are probably my top ones that I would suggest. I will also say like the majority of dashboards, or like 99% of the dashboards that, you know, you make at work are going to be those business ones that are like, they're not boring, they're creative in their own way. But, you know, you'll sometimes see something really crazy on Tableau Public, which is so cool because it gets your creative juices flowing. But just know that like when you get into the real world, it's going to be like, oh, can we get a table? And now you can use table viz extensions. But before you'd be like, let me make this cross tab and do all this. So yeah, that's the advice that I would give.
Dzifa, let's stop there for a moment because you just again threw another nugget on there and I saw Bhumika smile. So that lets me know that you knew exactly what Dzifa was talking about. When we go onto Tableau Public and we see all these amazing, very creative, you know, wonderful situations on Tableau Public. But then you just said, hey, in the real world though, which again, not saying that that's not real world, but to the business or whatever it is that you are interviewing for or trying to make your portfolio towards, it sounds like what we're saying is that, I mean, I know Bhumika, you brought up very specific examples of different ones that you did earlier, but going in and Dzifa kind of gave a little bit more on like, hey, if I'm going into HR, I'm going to find HR dashboards and I'm going to try to replicate those. Which may look very different from like our Data Plus Movies, beautiful, you know, creative pieces that shows a little bit of the creative side of yourself. But looking at that, thank you so much for sharing that because that's definitely something. Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I definitely relate to the point that the real world dashboards are not as fancy as the ones we see on Tableau Public, and I am guilty of like trying to reverse engineer some of the like pretty Tableau Public dashboards only to like figure out like there are Figma designs of the background of this one, and there are so many like different PNGs on this one, and yeah, so but I would say a portfolio is time for you to experiment. So just do what feels natural, because at the end of the day, when you're actually working in the organization, everyone would have like different preferences of what tables and chart everyone likes, and then you'll be working based on those expectations rather than your own creativity. So when you're making your portfolio, it's just all about your creativity, and you can like choose how to express it the best way.
Awesome.
That's so good. Love that.
We also have another one. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, sorry.
I have
just saying, like,
oh,
no, go ahead.
no, go. Sorry.
I just wanted to plus one. I was like, that's so good. Your portfolio is where you experiment. I love that. That's so good. That's all.
No, I love that. Love that. Which goes into this question too. So, and I can see where this person may be coming from. They stated that they were very vulnerable and shared that they often struggle on what data points to build charts, maps for any, and do you have any tips on how to collect the relevant data points or insights whenever we get a data set?
Yeah, I think that was one of the first mistakes even I made, just jumping off the deep end into a data set and trying out different fields, like dragging different fields on sheets and, just thinking that maybe something would make sense. And then I actually attended this one Tableau conference that told me the way to make, like, the way to end up with a dashboard is basically to start with a question. So just look at the fields that are available in the data set and build a question around it. Even if like no question is being presented to you, think why would someone look at this data set, or why would someone need this data set, and
Mm,
what would they want eventually as an actionable insight from this data set at, and just create a persona of someone who would want to use that data set, and what job they would do, and what insights they would need from this, and just keep that persona or that person at the back of your mind when you're working with it, and then it'll eventually come to you, and then you'll have a dashboard that actually is quite meaningful. That makes
love
sense.
that. Love that. So I do have another question for you all. Is when I'm looking at again everything, all the nuggets that you shared today. One of the things that's also is, as if you brought this up, Bhumika, the high achiever that you are, you slightly brought this up as well. But with that, you said ask questions. How do we talk? Like, let's just be honest. I just saw you on this virtual event. I have no idea who you are. I might have trolled you on LinkedIn and saw your portfolio, but like, as if you said specifically you don't even know this person and you went and asked them for help. What can you talk me through that? Can you talk me through people? Because we talk about DataFam. Everyone's talking about, oh, it's the fam, it's the DataFam. And they're like, where do you all meet up for the cookout? Right. And it's like there's no cookout. Like, unless you're talking about TC. Like, what do you mean? So, like, how do they start talking to people? How do we talk to each other and get that help?
Oh, I actually have a really fun story about this. I recently moved, from India to like from Delhi to London, and I joined Tableau as a student ambassador, and I thought that there would be many events that I would get invited to as a Tableau student ambassador, but it was basically nothing till December, and everything would start the year after. So I thought that okay, I knew no one in London, and I was just waiting around for events to happen. So I went on to LinkedIn and I typed in Tableau in the organization. There's a people section. And I asked ChatGPT to create an appropriate professional, 3-line message that would fit in that 200 words category. And I started like sending that out to everyone, hoping to invite people like to a conversation, and see what tools they are working on, and just get the ball rolling, like actually go on coffee chats. That was what my master's degree was actually advising me to do. Connect with people, go on coffee chats, listen about people's journey, and then you'll know what you eventually want to do. So to actually my surprise, and it actually happened at like 8:30 a.m. in the morning on a weekend. The only person from Tableau who replied was Francois Zimmerman, who was actually the CTO of Tableau.
Mm.
He was the only person who replied to me on LinkedIn. And it was just, yeah, let's meet up at this coffee shop. Where do you put up? And I actually checked the profile thrice to see if it's a fake profile or not. And it wasn't a fake profile. And I actually met him on coffee for breakfast, and he was so excited to tell me about Tableau Pulse. And this was like in 2023, October, November, where Tableau Pulse was still like in the production stage. And he was so excited about just showing, and we were actually sitting outside of a coffee shop in that small table, and he pulled out his laptop, and he was showing me all the different kind of charts. And I probably would have done only like one course on Tableau, so again I was nodding my head to that entire conversation. And that was actually helped me realize that if you basically reach out to 100 people, you'll find a few honest connections. And it's just about being actually persistent and resilient in your networking efforts, and actually being authentic too. don't I've seen a lot of people in networking events who just approach you and start talking about themselves rather than
Mhm.
actually building a two-way conversation. And I feel that's really important. Listen more than talk about yourself, or build try to tell something about yourself and then build up on that conversation by asking questions. So I feel the first step is generally utilize LinkedIn, just reach out to a lot of people, and the second step is to build your conversation skills. And being an introvert actually comes in handy. You eventually want to speak less and make the other person speak more. So being an introvert actually makes.
I love that. And that is a great story. And yeah, that's absolutely above amazing. But that just, again, just shows the character of who you are, but also you guys are sharing your pathways and your journeys. And we thank you so much. I understand that it's not always easy sharing this piece, but just thank you so much for bringing us these nuggets. And so with that being said, as we leave off with the nugget of networking, thank you all for coming. You can join our Career Path Makers Tableau user group. So if you're looking for someone to network with or want to learn more about the Career Path Makers, please join. And there is a link that will be shared, or that was already shared. Please, thank you so much for joining. And we want to just give a big round of applause really quickly to our wonderful presenters today. So Bhumika and Dzifa, thank you for letting me get all in your business. I really, really appreciate you. And thank you to our team, Sam, Alyssa, and Lilia. And thank you all who participated. The engagement was phenomenal. Thank you so very, very much. And I appreciate you all.